video, we're talking about the largest crack press resubmit fail I have ever seen, a potential loss of over $25,000. And this video is full of really helpful information about the whole process of crack press and resubmit. We'll go over all the terminology here, but if you're serious about comic book collecting, crack press and resubmit needs to be something that's in your repertoire, a way to upgrade your collection. So we're going to get into a whole bunch of helpful information here, but I also want to remind you that Bryce Comics is always buying. I could do particularly well on Grail books or really high value books. And in fact, I think that the seller of this book, I am almost certain that I could have had them walk away with much more money had they contacted me. And if you're somebody who sells books regularly, especially big Grails on Heritage, and you're watching this, reach out to me next time first, and I'll shoot you an offer. The very least, we just touch base and go our separate ways. There's no pressure on my end. It's just an offer. And one thing's for sure, it's faster and there's less of a headache involved. You're going to know exactly what you're going to get, and you're going to get your money quick. And rather than sending it to auction and waiting months for it to sell and not knowing what it's going to sell for, and then, like we're going to see in this video, potentially a really bad result in the auction. So sometimes it makes a lot of sense to take all of that guesswork out and just get a solid offer and get paid quick. So, and the reason I can do that with offer bigger money on big Grail books is because I like to offer books up for trade, like this Fantastic Four #1 5.0 that I have available for trade right now. I think by the time I'm done recording this video, it will have been claimed. And I have another book on the way right now as well, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle #1, a really special copy first print. And I was freaking out because this book was stuck in LA during the fire, and it said severe weather delay. And thank God I checked the tracking today, and it says it is out for delivery. I just want to take a moment to say that my heart goes out to any and everyone affected by this fire. Some of you know that I myself lost my home in a California wildfire. That's how we ended up here in the great state of Montana. But if you lost your home in that fire, I know exactly what you're going through right now. And even if you didn't lose your home, if you're in surrounding areas, the impact and effects of this are going to be far-reaching, countrywide, because economically, the economic result of a devastating wildfire like this is just crazy. Not to mention comic books. I mean, that very special copy of TMNT #1, and who knows how many valuable and irreplaceable comics were lost in this fire. And so it's just gut wrenching. I feel sick to my stomach about it. But just know that my heart goes out to you. My thoughts and prayers are with you. It's not what this video is about. Let's turn that around a little bit. If you were affected, maybe you can have 10 or 20 minutes here to just forget about it, have a little bit of a relief, and talk about comics if you're watching this and happen to be affected by it. The book that we're talking about today is Detective Comics #58, the first appearance of the Penguin, and in particular, this really special copy of it. This is the Promise Collection Pedigree. It sold this in September of 2024. It's at 8.0. And just real quick, what a pedigree is, this is the 61st pedigree, certified by a CGC, one of the largest with over 5,000 comics. And some more information here from Bleeding Cool. I mean, look at the grades on some of these. 9.6 white pages for Mega Grails, tons of single highest graded copies, a really special collection. And just to give you a little background of it, is a young man named Robert was drafted by the Army to fight in Korea. His younger brother, known as Junie, enlisted in the hopes of keeping watch over Robert. Junie had but one request of his big brother, that Robert take care of his collection of funny books should anything happen to him in battle. Robert knew how dear those books were to his brother, so he promised him, yes, of course, he would take care of the funny books. God forbid something happened. Then Junie was killed in action when he was 21 years old. Robert came home from the war and fulfilled his promise to his brother. The comic books were carefully boxed up and put in an attic where they stayed for over half a century. And that is one of the coolest stories ever for a pedigree, first of all. But second of all, I think that had it not happened this way, there wouldn't have been so many high-grade copies. I mean, had the brother come home from war and enjoyed his funny books, they would have been read and well-loved, and and they wouldn't have retained these 9.6 whites and these insane high grades because they were carefully protected by his brother out of love and fulfilling his promise, and then stored away. I'm sure it was an emotional thing, and he just wanted to just have that safe and not even look at it for however long it was. That's why it's just so rare that things like this actually happen. For all of those things to line up and for this to actually happen is just so incredibly rare. I also want to remind you we have a monthly giveaway here on the YouTube channel. If you subscribe, comment, and like, you're entered to win 2 free slabs this month, one of which is a CGC at 9.9. I was surprised to find out that it's sold 3 times so far. So it sold as a 7.5 at Heritage. Originally it was a 7.5, and it sold on September 8th of 2021. And here you can see on the book they had this like little sticker over the issue number, and then it sold a second time on Heritage 1 year later in September 8th of 2022, and then it sold a third time as an 8.0, and it's still the promised collection. And in fact, if you go and look at the original cert number, it is not found. So what happened was it was cracked, pressed, and resubmitted by CGC. So that's when you take a book that's been graded, you crack it out of its case, you improve some defect, and you regrade it. And so they had CGC do it because CGC removed this cert number from the census, and here you can see the current cert number for the 8.0. So there's 3 in 8.0 and there's 3 higher, one of the top 6 graded copies ever. But what's missing is right here on they took the little sticker off. That's what I believe is the full extent of this CPR, was just taking this sticker off. I don't know why they had this little sticker that said 19 covering up the actual issue number. But a book like this is so delicate and fragile that there's very little that you would want to do with pressing and cleaning. You have to be really careful. So I think all they did was take that sticker off, and then it sold in September of 2024 for $26,400. Now, it sold on September 12th. One thing that's interesting about this is the show aired September 19th, 1 week after the sale. So they timed it. It seems like they timed it, with promotions and trailers and stuff going on for the show. But I remember when this show came out, at least personally, I had 0 expectations of this show. I don't remember there being a lot of FOMO or hype for the show, but after the show started to come out, and this is one thing that we see sometimes with HBO Max and Disney Plus and TV series, is that if the show performs well week over week over week, and it starts to build excitement, that's when we see the impact really strong on comic books. And so potentially that played an issue here. Maybe they would have been better off if they had waited, a couple months after the show came out and it really started to build, and Colin Farrell absolutely killed his role as the Penguin. But who knows? Because for a book of this caliber, around $26,000, the impact of the show is going to be minimal. Maybe it brought in a few extra collectors, but most likely, the same collectors that were already going to bid on this regardless of the show. But I do think that $26,400 was not a good sale. I think that was a good price for this book. So congratulations to whoever bought it. But let's take a look at the financials of this, because this is just worst case scenario. They were actually successful in getting the grade bump, and it still sold for way less than the original purchase price. So if we come over here and take a look at some of these fees, when you submit a book, and this is a really important point, when you submit a book to be pressed, cleaned, or graded by CGC, you declare the value. Okay, CGC is not in the business of valuing comic books, so they rarely adjust your value unless it's way off. Okay, so if you declared the value as $20,000, worst thing they can do is come back and say, we want to bump this to $40,000 declared value because we see the last sale. But sometimes they'll just let it slide through for the $20,000, even if it's $20,000 off. I mean, I've had experiences like this. The one thing to remember about that is whatever you declare the value at is what it's insured at while it's at CGC. And so if something were to happen to the book, if they were to lose it or destroy it, they're going to go with your declared value unless it's not in their favor. So if you declared it as $100,000 and it's really only worth $40,000, they're going to look up the value before they do any kind of payout if they damage your book and go with the actual value. So they only do it when it's in their favor. I think that's totally sleazy. I think that they should look at the value regardless of what you declared it at, but there might be some other things that play there too, like their insurance policy goes off declared value. But in my opinion, they should always look at the actual value and make payouts based on that, but they only do it when it's in their favor. So one thing to consider when you're doing a declared value, if you do decide to declare it for less than it's actually worth. So for 4%, let's just assume that they declared it at $40,000. That's $1,600. That's just for the pressing. And then they also charge you 4% of fair market value to regrade it. So that's another $1,600. And then the heritage fee is 30%. So heritage charges a 20% buyer's premium and a 10% seller's premium. That can be negotiated for really big books, but we're just going to assume they went with the standard here. And that 30% fee of the final sale price of $26,400 would have been $7,920. And then when they bought the book for $40,800, they may have had sales tax. So we're just going to assume that they had a 7% sales tax for $2,800. So the total fees involved in buying it for $40,800 and then selling it on heritage after having CGC crack press and regrade it is $13,976. Now, there is a ton of assumptions here. I'm assuming that the person who bought it for $40,800 is the person that sold it for $26,400. It's possible that it changed hands privately before that, but it's not. The point isn't about that. The point is about just having some good tips and lessons learned if this were the scenario about CPR. It's not about shaming the person who bought or sold or anything like that. There's no judgment whatsoever in this video. I just want to use this as an opportunity to present some ideas. So if their final sale price was $26,400 and the fees from all of that involved is $13,976, which doesn't even include shipping back and forth all over the place, their net takeaway, if they bought it for $40,800 and sold it for $26,000, their net takeaway would be $12,424 in their pocket. So if they paid $40,800 and they got $12,424 in their pocket, it's a total net loss of $28,376. An absolutely devastating result if you get the actual bump that you were going for. Now, some things to note about this. Number one is don't be blinded by desire about the current state of the market. Okay, if you're going with something that had a sale in 2022 to a sale in 2024, you need to be realistic about the current state of the market. That's the biggest thing. Okay, don't be blinded by desire and think, oh, if I send it to auction, maybe it'll do this record-breaking sale. Yeah, it's always possible, but the reality of this market, we're not seeing a lot of record-breaking sales. So be honest with yourself. The second thing is having a game plan about CPR. Take a look at the book. In this case, it had that little sticker on it. And talk to somebody who knows their stuff about comics, maybe even CGC themselves, and say, hey, what would it get if it didn't have that, if that sticker was successfully removed? And if they said it would go from a 7.5 to an 8, when you factor in all of these fees, there's just no possible way this is a winning scenario. So the only reason you should do it is if you're going to keep it in your personal collection. If you're doing it with the intent to sell, you got to be realistic about all of these fees. Don't be blinded by desire. Play the actual tape through, be realistic about the potential grade bump, be realistic about the values, and calculate all of these fees. Don't just blindly go, oh, it has potential to get a bump, I should send it in. If it's just a half a point, you got to go into GPA and look at the difference in value between half a point, sometimes even a 2 grade bump. If it goes from, like, for some books, a 6.0 to an 8.0, sometimes the difference in value is not enough to cover the fees. And so you just have to be realistic with yourself about that and factor in potential market drop. Because if the value of the books are going down and this whole process takes many months to complete, then you also have that waging against you. So this is all of these things combined is why I rarely do CPR in this market. When I buy collections, unless it's a total slam dunk, unless it's, a major increase in value and I can get it back relatively quickly, I do it on occasion if it's a total slam dunk, but it's rare because for all of those things to align. Now, when the market turns around and we start trending back up, it's a completely different conversation. Back in 2020, when the market was going crazy, even if you went for a CPR and you got a lower grade, oftentimes that lower grade by the time you got it back was still worth more. So you had a lot more leeway with CPR. And once this market turns around, I'm definitely going to be way more active with Crack Press Resubmit. I'm going to be paying really close attention to books that come through in collections that haven't been pressed or cleaned, and you should too, because it's a really valuable way to get some equity in your books if you know what you're doing. And maybe the one takeaway from this is that this book now presents better. So it's like this book is in its absolute best presenting condition. It doesn't have that stupid sticker on it. It says the right thing. So that's one positive thing from all of this. Don't forget to sign up for that newsletter at brycecomics.com for some exciting new stuff coming through soon. We have that giveaway here on the YouTube channel if you subscribe, comment, and like. And I appreciate you sticking with me all the way to the end. We'll catch you in the next video. Bye.